What's happening, my peoples? This is the dude, your boy, Intergalactic Brew. Uh, let's see, it's 11:47, and I've been here on YouTube watching everybody's UFC 130 predictions video. Of course, this is what I'm going to talk about, right? UFC 130. Now, there's one thing that I will agree with everybody else on, and that is this card is extremely boring. No disrespect to you, Quentin, but this card in its entirety is extremely boring. I mean, it's just been like no build up, you know, no serious anticipation or anything like that, no excitement. So, this is going to be one of those average cards or whatever, to the point where when you watch it, you're just ready for it to be done with, so you can just move on and look forward to the next UFC, pretty much. Let's see. So let's talk about the pay-per-view. Okay, one of the first fights of the night. I think this fight should be fairly good, but who knows? We got Brian, the All-American Stan, or the All-American Brian Stan, I should say, taking on Jorge Santiago. As you all know, Jorge Santiago is making his first UFC appearance in about a couple of years. His last stint in the UFC was around 2006, before he exited and went on his journey to, other countries like Japan and Europe and everywhere else in between. And then all of a sudden, while over in those other countries, he became a champion, which was in Sengoku. Became the Sengoku middleweight champion, and he won the Strikeforce Grand Prix. No, I'm sorry. He won the Dream Grand Prix. I'm sorry. Defeated Trevor Prangley and Sean Salmon. Whoop-de-doo. In one night to become the Dream middleweight champion. Or I think it was Dream. I don't know. Anyway, the bottom line is he became a champion in Japan. And since he's become a champion, he's had a pretty good win streak. I think he's 11-2 over the past 3-4 years, ever since he left the UFC. So now, since he feels that he's vastly improved, he's rejuvenated, he's gotten a fresh start, he feels like he's ready to come back and give it another try in the UFC. And his first opponent is going to be Brian Stan. Now, of course, Brian Stan is going to be, kind of egotistical and say that, he's going to come in and he's going to knock out Jorge Santiago and all this other stuff, which I beg to differ big time. And I'll tell you why here in a second. But yeah, I mean, he's got some power, I mean, if Jorge Santiago does the dumb thing and tries to think that he can match power with Brian Stan, yeah, of course he's going to get flattened. Of course, why wouldn't he? Of course, somebody's got to pay the price. That's why we have choices. And if I was Jorge Santiago, I know everybody's saying that, his number one choice should be to grapple with Brian Stan, which is the intelligent thing to do. But I think people are kind of like really underestimating Jorge Santiago's striking. I mean, he's got some very, very good Muay Thai skill. I mean, his knees are brutal. I know he hasn't beaten, top of the line opponents, but for the opponents he has beaten, he surely, punished them, especially with those knees. Also, he's got some very good leg kicks. He comes out of American Top Team, so you know he trains with guys like Thiago Alves and Thiago Silva and Luis Kane and those just violent strikers. So yeah, his striking ability is very, very good. People just tend to underestimate it for some reason. And I think he can hold his own against Brian Stan. I think if he just, uses, the footwork and the head movement and just, incorporates the kicks with the punches. Because actually, Santiago has a very good jab. And he's got some very good combinations, too. And, if he can just, circle around and be the quicker guy and just, combine the punches with the kicks, I think he has a good chance of wobbling Brian Stan, if not knocking him out standing up. But again, I still think that might not be the best option. So I think everybody is right. I think Santiago should try to take Brian Stan down. His grappling ability is not that good right now. It's vastly growing and evolving, but I don't think he's to that level yet. So I think his best bet would be to take Brian Stan down and grapple him and try to submit him. And I can really see that happening. The only thing about it is sometimes when guys come over and make their re-debut in an organization, they tend to let their egos get the best of them, as we all know. And they try to prove something, and I have a feeling that maybe Santiago might want to prove something and prove that his striking skills are just as good, if not better, than Brian Stan, and he might want to knock him out, which will spell trouble for him. But I do believe, in the midst of doing that, I believe he'll take Brian Stan down, and I think he's going to submit him, either by a rear naked choke or maybe arm triangle, one of those. But I can see Jorge Santiago submitting Brian Stan, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to happen maybe somewhere, I'd say like in the middle of the second round. But then again, I'm not doubting Brian Stan either. I think Brian Stan has just as great a chance of winning this fight as Jorge Santiago does, because like I said, Santiago will try to be egotistical because he's coming back to the UFC and he wants to come out with a bang and wants to prove something. And that might end up costing him, and Brian Stan just might end up stopping him in the process. So no shock here if that happens. But I can just see him, being that Brian Stan is one-dimensional at this point. I could see Santiago taking him down and submitting him. So Jorge Santiago sub, middle second round. Next fight we're going to talk about is Rick Story, Thiago Alves. I was kind of surprised by this fight. Not the fact that the match was made, but that the fight was going to be on the main card, because I actually thought these two were going to fight maybe on the Spike TV card or something like that. But I mean, it's cool. I mean, whatever the UFC wants to do. If they feel like it's main card material, then it's main event material, But anyway, I think this is really sort of a bad matchup for Rick Story. I mean, although I'm not doubting his ability, I mean, he's an extremely aggressive fighter. He has relentless pressure, stellar wrestling ability, good striking with the boxing, and he's hardcore, man. He could take a beating to give a beating. But so is Thiago Alves. Alves is tough as hell too. Only thing I worry about with Thiago is that will he be leery of the takedown? Because as we all know, his kryptonite has been the wrestling. And although he's practices wrestling very, very diligently, and he showed some good display of wrestling in his last fight against John Howard, he's dealing with a much superior wrestler in Story, and we've seen Thiago Alves his demise in the past has been against stellar wrestlers like the John Fitches, like the George St. Pierre's, so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if Story can take Thiago Alves down and basically just maul him on the ground and not allow him to stand back up, Rick Story can pull the upset here. I mean, it is possible, but I think just the fire and the motivation that Story has to win this fight, again, ego is going to get in the way, and I think he's going to try to stand up with Alves and try to strike with him. And I think that's going to be a bad idea, and he's going to find out it's going to be a bad idea. And Alves is just going to mollywop him. I mean, either with a straight jab, or either like a leg kick followed by a flying knee, or maybe just a couple of knees in the tie clinch and some ground and pound. But one way or another, I can see Alves TKO in Story, if not winning a decision. But I think he's going to TKO Story. I think it'll happen in the third round. This is going to be fight of the night. I know a couple of people have predicted that. I'm going to predict that too. So Thiago Alves is going to win the third round TKO. Let's see, what else do we have? The co-main event is Roy Nelson versus Frank Mir. This is actually a confusing fight to me because both of these guys seem to be pretty even. I think that Frank Mir, by a tad, does have the more crisp, technical style of striking. Roy Nelson is not all that bad with technique either, but although he does get, really sloppy and just throws caution to the wind. So, yeah. It'll be interesting to see, how Roy Nelson's technique is in this fight, because I know Frank Mir is going to come out and try to be very technical, and he's going to try and catch Roy Nelson and be like the counter fighter in this fight. And it may go to the ground maybe a couple of times, but for the most part, both of these guys are going to want to look to knock each other out. I mean, because they both have high caliber jiu-jitsu, and they're going to be like, screw all that, man. We're trying to stand, and we're going to put our dukes up, and we're going to see who goes down first. I think Roy Nelson, just because of his power, and I think because he's the more tougher guy here, and he could take the most punishment and continue, I think that's going to be a little bit overwhelming to Frank Mir. And we've seen when guys pour it on Frank Mir, a la Shane Carwin, Brock Lesnar, Brandon Vera even, Frank Mir does tend to shut down, and I think that's what's going to happen here. So I could just see Roy Nelson like putting the pressure on Frank Mir, and basically just continuing to back him up, and he'll be able to catch him in certain situations against the fence. And I think he's going to use his size to lean on Frank Mir in the cage, and dirty box him and try to wear Frank Mir out and kind of break his will. So you know what? I'm going to pick a decision here. I'm going to say Roy Nelson is going to win this fight. I say split decision. Split decision, Roy Nelson. Then we got the main event, of course. Quentin Rampage Jackson, Matt Hamill. I heard a lot of people say, about Quentin, that he's not motivated and everything like that. Well, yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, he does look like he's tired of, the MMA business or fighting in general. I think at this point, he just wants to please his fans and just put on magnificent fights. I don't think he's looking forward to anything, even if he does meet Matt Hamill, which I think he will. This is mostly going to be a stand-up fight. Matt Hamill may attempt a couple of takedowns here and there, but Rampage is going to end up stuffing those takedowns. Matt Hamill's striking is not up to par, at least not to Rampage's quality. And I could just see Quentin, catching him with like a left hook or something like that. In the, I say I'm going to go second round TKO Quentin Rampage Jackson.